When we pick a formation in FIFA, we generally think of how it plays out in attack, but don't actually give it too much thought on how the defensive structure of it works. Generally, the game is going by too fast for us to really notice, and we just assume that it's the same as the form of attack. But that just isn't the case. So in this video, I want to go over each formation's default defensive structure, how it shifts between attack and defense, and a few little tips here and there on how custom tactics can change your defensive formation. Of course, defining and understanding your defensive structure is just one part of getting better in this game, but I'll be going over specific features and mechanics like this in near future videos. So definitely subscribe and keep your notifications on for those, because there are lots of interesting things about this game that just, in my opinion, aren't well known and aren't well explained online. So we'll start here just going over really simply, if you pick a formation, what will it look like in defense? And we'll start with the most popular of them all, which is the 4-4-2. So really, if you're playing this game, there's no way you don't know what this is, but 4-4-2, you have 4 guys in the defensive line, you have 4 in the midfield, and then you have 2 strikers up above. Now, generally speaking, with all of these defensive formations, it will look like this no matter where you are on the field, right? So if you're in the low block, medium block, high block, it will all have the same structure, just that it'll look a little bit differently. They might be spaced a little bit differently, more, right here when we're in the low block, the lines are kind of compressed. Obviously, when we're further up the field, then they're more spread out and so on. But generally, you have the same kind of structure as this. Now, of course, in terms of transitions, when you're transitioning from offense to defense, you'll have guys pushing up into attack, and then you'll get counterattacked. And obviously, you can't maintain that 4-4-2 structure because you guys just aren't there in time. So keep that in mind also. I'm just talking in this video about your stable defensive structure when you have everybody back in their formation or in their positions. So I'll list the formations off right here, which use 4-4-2 in defense. So obviously 4-4-2 flat and 4-4-2 holding will turn out into 4-4-2 in defense. But also the 2-4-1-2-1-2 formations, the wide and the narrow, also turn out to be 4-4-2 in defense. Those defensive mids and attacking mids kind of compress back into center mids for defense. 4-2-2-2 and 4-2-4, obviously those are very similar to 4-4-2, so they come back into 4-4-2 in defense. 4-3-1-2 and 4-1-3-2 are quite similar to 4-1-2-1-2, like I just said, so those also come into 4-4-2s. Now there are 4 formations that are quite surprising here. So those are 3-1-4-2, 3-4-1-2, 3-5-2, and 3-5-1-1. So those are 3 at the back formations, but they actually kind of rotate back into a 4-4-2 in defense. So how that happens is your 3 center backs turn out to be your 2 center backs and your right back. And then your, no, sorry, I got it backwards. Okay, so your 3 center backs turn out to be your 2 center backs and your left back. So these, if I can switch properly, these 3 guys are your 3 center backs in those formations. This is your right wing back or your right winger essentially. And then your left winger or left wing back pushes up in the midfield to form that 4-4-2. Then these are your 3 midfielders and your 2 attackers still. So that's kind of how it works out. Now let's just, there's many different things. Well, not many, but there's some different things that you can do with your coaching adjustments to make each of these look a little bit differently, to give you something a little bit different in defense. So right here, what I did is I told my wingers to stay forward in that custom tactic. So what that did is that brought them here between the striker line and the midfield line. So in general, there's actually kind of 5 lines. There's the main 3 that I talked about: defense, midfield, and attack. But you can also find guys in the attacking midfield type of area between, obviously, the midfield and attack. And then sometimes, not often, you can get them between the defense and the midfield. So in this case, obviously, when you get down to a low block like this, down to the goal, it's not super ideal to have those guys up there because they won't contribute anything. You see the wingers, they don't contribute anything, and then you can kind of just walk around this area. But it can be helpful, like if you're pressing up high, like if you're generally aggressive, or you want to towards the end of the game and you're trying to get a goal back, you push those guys further up to cut off those attacking lanes or cut off those passing lanes, and to just pressure high up the field so you can win the ball up the field and go forward. So it has its benefits in terms of that. So you might want to consider using that custom tactic where you put those guys to stay forward. Just be careful, don't do just one of them. So if you do just one of them, the structure will completely change. You won't get something that looks like this. It'll turn into a completely different formation. So I won't go into details too much on that right now, but just keep that in mind. The kind of unfortunate thing is that in reality, you might get something that looks like this higher up the field, and then when you get lower down the field in low block, these guys will automatically come into more of a 4-4-2. Unfortunately, we can't do that in FIFA. So you have to kind of pick and choose which one you want. 4-4-2 being more defensively sound, but this one being a little bit more attack minded. Plus, yeah, these guys will be in a better position in terms of your counterattack as well. The other thing you can do is you can use the quick adjustment right here. You can go to the defensive tactics on the D-pad, and then you can say striker drop back. So what striker drop back does, and this only works for defensive formations that have two strikers. So in the case of the 4-4-2. So what that does is he just drops back into the attacking midfield line. If I didn't put these guys to stay forward, and if it was more of a flat 4-4-2, then this guy, rather than dropping right behind the striker, he kind of staggers with the striker. So I kind of like to do that by default. So you're kind of creating more levels and a little bit more vertical compression between your lines. I don't know if it's super important or not, but that's something I generally do. So that's quick adjustment right there isn't so much like this guy is going to, no matter what, your striker is just going to come back and defend. It's simply just adjustment is if you have two strikers, one of them will drop off a little bit. Now, there are certain formations that will give you this kind of 4-4-1-1 type of defensive structure like I was just talking about right there, where you have the 4-4-2 and you use the striker drop back and defend, and he kind of goes back into this attacking midfield line right here and staggers with the other striker. So there are some formations that do this by default, and you don't have to do anything there. So those are the two 4-2-3-1s. So 4-2-3-1 narrow and 4-2-3-1 wide. 4-4-1-1 midfield. So that's the one with the attacking midfielder rather than the center forward behind the striker. And then also 4-3-3 attack. So that's the one with the attacking midfielder. So generally, if you have one striker and an attacking midfielder behind him, it will look something like this. So 4-4-2, where that 2 is staggered. Okay, the next one is the 4-3-3. And I think this is probably the worst one because you have your two wingers and your striker really aren't contributing in terms of the low block. So those guys won't really do anything. Of course, just like I showed you with the 4-4-2 adjustment where those wingers stay high, it can be beneficial in terms of if you're pressing high. But in general, you see like this big open area between the midfielders and their attackers. And then obviously down here as well, if I just go over here, of course the midfield can shift over, but there's just too much space over here in the half space, kind of above the box, that you can freely roam around and pass, unless your opponent's really good at shifting over with this midfield. So in general, I don't think this is a great defensive form that you want to be in. It's the closest to a 4-5-1, I guess. Or actually, I don't think it is. I think the 4-4, the one I just showed before this, is maybe closest to 4-5-1, but there is no 4-5-1 in the game. Anyway, so the attacking or the regular formations that turn out to be like this in defense are 4-1-4-1. The two 4-5-1s, so 4-5-1 attack with the attacking midfielders and 4-5-1 flat. You have the rest of the 4-3-3s, so false 9, defend, holding, and flat will look like this. And it's simply just whatever, it doesn't matter what the arrangement of these guys, it's simply the left guy will be the left center mid, the right guy will be the right center mid, and the middle guy will be the defensive mid type of guy. So even in 4-3-3 defend, where the middle guy is the most advanced guy in attack, he'll be the deepest guy in defense as well. So a little bit counterintuitive, but that's just kind of how it works out. Also 4-3-2-1, so the Christmas tree type of formation, similar to 4-3-3, will turn out like this as well. And then a bit surprisingly, 3-4-2-1 will translate to a 4-3-3 in defense. What happens there is similar to how those other three at the back formations went to 4-4-2. This one, how it works out is these three guys are your three center backs. This is your right wing back or your right winger. And then your left wing back tucks in right here into the center defensive mid role. So a little bit strange and unorthodox, but that's just how it goes. And that's just kind of what you're going to have to deal with. Now, there is a way to get, if you want to play 4-4, if you want to play these 4-3-3 formations or 4-5-1, 4-1-4-1, there is a way to get it to 4-4-2, and that's simply with coaching adjustment or the custom tactics. Okay, so what I did is I took my three forwards, so this guy, and this guy, and I gave them a specific set of custom adjustments. So I picked two of them that I want to stay forward. So in this case, I picked the striker and the right winger, and I put them on stay forward. And then I picked one of those guys, which is the left winger, and I put him on come back on defense. So that adjustment, that stay forward and come back on defense is not like, they're just going to come back willy-nilly, just no matter what. It's if it's possible for them to fit in the structure, then they'll come back. So what that means is that you have to be kind of careful with how you do your structure, with how you do your adjustments or your custom tactics. If you put them all three on come back on defense, nothing happens. Like nothing changes from the 4-3-3. So you have to be smart with it. If you want to go down to 4-4-2, you pick one of them and tell them to come back, and then you pick the other two and tell them to stay forward. They can't be on balance. They have to stay on stay forward. That way, you can still do the 4-3-3 if you like it, and then in defense, in my opinion, you're much better off with this 4-4-2. Okay, the next one is the 5-3-2 formation right here. So the formations that turn out into this are 5-2-1-2, and then obviously the 5-3-2 as well. So you have your 5 defensemen, you have your 2 attackers, and your 3 midfielders. I'm not a huge fan of this one because these 3 midfielders are pretty far spread apart. So you see a lot of situations you can get this middle guy overloaded where you have 2 guys beside him, and then he can't cover either of those guys essentially. So, and then the width of your defense, like you have the ability to adjust that, but it does not affect the midfield and attack. And I'll do a video on that in the near future. So you can't change this. The only thing you can do is you can play around with step up on your outside center backs, and that can close space down. That's something that I do, and that I'll do a video on that as well, to help close down those areas a little bit more. But yeah, in general, 5-3-2 isn't super great. Just like with the 4-4-2, you can do striker drop back, and so now you're kind of a little bit more of a 5-3-1-1 type of deal, and you can kind of cover the right area a little bit better with this guy. So you can kind of cover this guy right here. But unfortunately, this guy kind of just stays in the middle rather than covering the open guy here. But anyway, it's not terrible. It's not great, but it's another option for you. And actually, while I'm here with this guy dropped back, there are a couple of formations that by default look like this 5-3-1-1 type of look. And those are 5-4-1 diamond and the 3-4-3 diamond. And lastly, you have the 5-4-1. In my opinion, this is the best one, obviously, because you have 9 guys essentially behind the ball. So one of those strikers essentially goes back into the defensive line right here. So you have 3 center backs with those guys wide over here, and then plus you don't sacrifice that midfield 4 that you had in the 5 or the 4-4-2. So that's really nice. So obviously the 5-4-1 flat will turn out like this, and then the 5-2-3, which is kind of like the 5-4-1 except with wingers instead of outside midfielders, and then surprisingly, but maybe not surprisingly, the 3-4-3 by default comes back into a 5-4-1 as well. So that's really nice in my opinion, because 3-4-3 you can kind of explode in attack, and then as long as you don't get countered too quickly, you can kind of compress and fold back into this 5-4-1, which is really difficult to break down if you don't beat them on the counter. So 5-4-1, Yeah, it's quite nice. So it isn't too much more to say about that. And that's it. So there are a few other formations, but you have to kind of play around with stay forward and drop back in defense and things like that. And you can kind of create some interesting and unique types of things. But in general, these are the main ones that you'll be seeing and the main ones that you'll be probably using. So anyway, that's it for this one. This is my first FIFA video. So if you liked it, definitely leave a like. Subscribe if you want to kind of follow my journey, kind of looking through some of these tactics, what they mean, how they actually work, and what they do, which ones are good, which ones are bad, and so on. Definitely subscribe, put those notifications on so you can know when I upload. And then if you really liked it, definitely tell a friend. I'm trying to grow this channel. I think it can be fun. And yeah, so that's it for this first video, and then hopefully the next one won't be too far from now. Okay.